We'll call the meeting to order. Today we're having the ninth meeting of the Special Committee on the Canadian Mission in Afghanistan. We have a two-part meeting this morning from 11 till noon. The minister is available till 12 o'clock. We have the Honourable Stockwell Day, Minister of International Trade, with us. Minister Day is also the chair of the Cabinet Committee on Afghanistan, and he's appearing before us in that role. And so I think in order to get as much time with the minister as possible, I'll open it up to the minister for comments, and then we'll start our first round of questioning, and that'll be about all we have time to do. So, Minister Day, we certainly want to welcome you, and the committee, as you know, is responsible for making Canadians more aware of our mission in Afghanistan, and certainly your appearance today will help us do that. So, sir, the floor is yours.
Merci bien, Monsieur le Président. Merci bien, mes collègues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. It's an honor for me to be here today. I appreciate your interest very much because this is a subject that is very important to all Canadians. Just a few comments to start with. And I hope you will give me some advice and then some questions that I can follow up on for you. And I hope that the results of a meeting of this type will be that we will have a better understanding of the situation and perhaps have some ideas and advice for the future.
Participation with the 42 nations related to Afghanistan, our reporting process is unique in that, and we have scanned the other 41 nations that are participants in Afghanistan. We believe we are the only ones who produce a quarterly report, as we do, and you have the copies here. We also have information packages for you at the end of the meeting, should you so desire, and we're handing some of these out right now. What we have done, and this is taking guidance from the independent commission, an independent report that was headed up by Mr. Honourable John Manley some time ago. We have identified, as you're aware, benchmarks of progress, and we have also identified 6 priority areas along with certain signature projects, infrastructure related, where we can measure what we are doing in Afghanistan, and we can see whether we're making progress in each of the 6 areas or, in fact, if we're not making progress, and we do that on a quarterly basis. These reports are very transparent. They are tough in terms of they are not embellished in any way. You'll notice, as I'm sure as a task force or as a committee, I'm sure you have gone through these quarterly reports. You'll see that we're clear where we did not hit a certain benchmark that we were hoping to hit. That's clearly identified. The reasons for it, we try to identify those, and how we're going to move on. In the quarterly reports, this one covers the time from January 1, 2009 up to March 31. You may have some questions related to activities that have gone on since then, and I'll try and address those. But the quarterly reports, there's obviously always some delay time because we go to that, the end point, accumulate all of the material, and publish the report. When we release the report, the report is released in Parliament. It's also we also do a full news conference so that the media also has all the details, and so they are able to ask questions. Just some of the overall highlights. One of our main infrastructure signature projects is related to the Dalla Dam. When this dam is completely reconstructed and rebuilt, which we have a goal to have that done by the end of 2011, it will provide irrigation, it will provide power all through the valley, and literally hundreds of thousands of people will be the beneficiaries of that infrastructure. What was accomplished in this last quarter, a bridge that will be necessary to transport heavy equipment onto the dam site was completed so that work can begin. The contracts for this were all let in the previous quarter, so work can continue to progress. We also saw the completion of 2 more schools. We have a goal to build 50 schools. 25 are under construction. With the completion this last quarter of 2 more schools, we're now up to 5 that have been completed. In another area, a target area for us being the eradication of polio, over 300,000, close to 350,000 more children were vaccinated with the polio vaccine. We're pleased to see overall progress of over 5 million children now have been vaccinated against polio. These are very significant developments, along with the progress that we continue to make on the education side. We've seen reported since January, and this was included in the report in January, some 11,000 more people. This are all within our area of jurisdiction in Kandahar, have taken the course of basic literacy, majority of those being women. And we have seen another 300 and some thousand registered onto the eligible voters list. The period of registration, official registration, is now over in terms of the work to be done, but the registration list itself is still open so people can register for the August elections. That brought to a total of 4.4 million registered that we have been involved with, and that means some 12.6 million people are registered to vote in Afghanistan in the elections that are coming up. The elections, as you would expect from elections anywhere, appear to be advancing in a very robust manner, with candidates out there at a variety of levels talking about what they are going to do for the people. There's a familiar ring to that. The debate among candidates seems to be robust, with the usual supportive and questioning comments between candidates as far as their policies and what they think they're going to accomplish for the people. We are being very careful not to be involved, other than supplying $35 million for the election process, and that involves security. We are not in any way indicating preferences for candidates, who we would like to see or not like to see. We're just very encouraged to see that the democratic process is emerging in Afghanistan, and we have had a significant part to play in that. I'm looking forward to your questions, advice, suggestions that you may have. The report, as you'll see, it's fairly detailed, but it's designed to be a relatively easy read for anybody who is interested in progress in Afghanistan. You'll see that it's laid out under each of our 6 areas of priority, what our target is, the benchmark we use to measure any progress or lack of progress, and the result. And those are read in a linear fashion, so it's relatively easy to follow. I should also tell you that we can produce for you, if you haven't seen it, every month there are a series of public presentations by a wide variety of groups across the country in terms of what is going on in Afghanistan, and we need to make Canadians aware of this. There is a website that is set up, of course, for people to gain this information. So I appreciate your involvement, your interest, your suggestions, and your questions. Mr. Chairman, I would turn it over to your honourable members at this time.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Day. And we'll, you can see we have exactly 40 minutes, and we have 4 time slots of 10 minutes each. So we'll keep to that, and we'll start with the official opposition. Mr. Wilford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Minister, for coming. And Minister, I'll do something unusual. I will congratulate you and your colleagues on the fact that these reports are sent out on a quarterly basis. I think it's important that as a committee that we very much assess our 6 priority goals and to ensure that, in fact, we are meeting those goals. Minister, I have 3 areas of questioning that I'd like to ask, and then hopefully fairly brief, and I'll share that with my colleagues. First area, with regard to the Sharia law that initially was brought before the President, we have a gender advisor that's in the Interior Ministry, and we're spending about $680,000, significant programs, too numerous to mention. Just the question that I have is, how would something of that nature have caught us off guard, given the fact that we have someone embedded in there, and the fact that this would have occurred under present circumstances, and what are we doing to ensure that that type of situation does not occur again, given the fact this is one of our goals, and I think a very laudable goal, in integrating women into Afghan society fully?
Well, it's certainly a question that I was asking and that others have asked. This is something that emerged from within their own process, within the Afghanistan legislative process, and I read with some interest that even the legislators said they had signed and passed this without seeing it or reading it. Now, we know that would never, ever happen in a Canadian parliamentary situation where a law or a bill would come forward and we would be seen as not having read it from one end to the other. But in fact, it did happen in their situation, and it's when issues like that come forward, I think, are able to do a bit of a reassessment. We never want to be seen to be telling the people of Afghanistan what they can and can't do relative to determining their own destiny, especially as they move forward in the democratic and legislative process. However, when things like it was actually a Shia law, element that came forward, when something like this comes out that is so opposed and so antithetical to what we believe about human rights, rights of women and equality, then as much as we want to respect their own sovereignty, we have to raise those issues, because we are, in fact, as you know, investing heavily in Afghanistan, in fact, investing with Canadian lives. And so we were quick to raise the concerns on it. They have agreed, the people of Afghanistan, their legislative process, they have agreed to put alert systems in place so that in the future we and all the world was caught off guard by this. So we have put that in place, and we have been assured that situations like this that could possibly cause consternation, rightly so, would be brought to our attention.
As you know, Minister, through you, Mr. Chairman, there'll be additional laws that are coming forward soon, etc., with regard to women, and just to make sure that those communications, those mechanisms are in place. Minister, an area where we have not been doing very well, in my view, and that is on capacity building at the village level. And one of the opportunities was through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities was to go there towards the end of June to look at providing municipal expertise, which we are, of course, very rich in this country, to assist the Afghan government. Could you explain to me why, in fact, that mission was cancelled? And do you have, or does the government have any plans in the future to really use the expertise of municipal leaders, as has been done in elsewhere, South Africa, Chile, etc., in order to help develop capacity building at the village level?
Anything that we're doing in Afghanistan, of course, is at the invitation of and at the accommodation of the government and the people of Afghanistan. So we can't, or no country can just kind of swoop in there and say the somewhat scary phrase, we're from the government and we're here to help. We have to do this in conjunction with their timelines. That involves security issues. Which areas do we feel and do they feel there's a high level of security that can be provided so that we don't put civilians at risk? We have 2,800 troops right now in Afghanistan. We have at the federal level, we have 98 civilian officers, and out of respect for what's going on in their own jurisdictions, we don't just come crashing in. We get lots, everywhere I travel in the country, I have people coming up and saying, you know, maybe I'm a police officer, I'd love to go over there, I'm a health worker, I'd love to go over there. There are ways in which people can make themselves available, and we ask that they do that, and then we do it within the capacity and at the time frame that's most applicable to the people of Afghanistan and their government.
Don't disagree. This was, though, at the invitation of Kandahar authorities, and it was being funded through the Afghan Fund. But if you could follow up on that, Minister, I would appreciate that, because again, if we really want to make a difference at the village level, would be logical as one of our tools. And since CETA does fund on a 5-year basis the FCM, one would think that that would be the most logical, rather than a top-down driven process, bottom-up.
I'll get any more details that might be available on that for you, Mr. Chairman. We'll send that to you. In my most recent visit to Afghanistan, I was actually pleased to see the amount of involvement literally at the street level of civilian development officers working in conjunction with NGOs and with the civil society groups that have developed within Afghanistan. For instance, in Kandahar City, they're emerging what we would call Chamber of Commerce. It was very encouraging to see the number of people involved in small business, working with development officers from Canada, working with loans officers, the area of microfinancing, all of these, the signs of some healthy developments at the grassroots level were there and were emerging. And on this particular item, if there's more information that's available, let me see if I can get that to you, specifically related to the municipality's request.
Thank you. And one more quick question through you, Mr. Chairman. Minister, with regard to the ANP, we are lagging significantly behind in terms of the benchmarks that have been established. Can you provide us very briefly, given the fact that we are so far behind, and we realize that they started later than the ANA, can you outline to us what steps are going to be taken in order to try and meet our objective of 2011?
A couple of things come to bear when we're looking at the training of the Afghan National Police. First of all, there is progress. One of the reasons, when you look at the capacity and look at the numbers you'd like to have, there's a couple of things that work into it. There has been a pay discrepancy between police and Army. Added to that, for some period of time, and we'll report on this in the next quarter, literally the mortality rate of those who were among the Afghan National Police Force was higher than those on the Army side. And so you can imagine you're in a recruiting program and possible recruits are looking at the situation. They're looking at, I get less pay if I'm a police officer and a higher chance of being killed. Literally, you know, they're quite rightly doing their evaluation on that score. So we've been addressing that. When Minister Cannon and I were over there recently, we announced an extra $21 million to go to salary and benefits to help deal with that discrepancy. The other thing that kicks in, when they hit a certain level of training, many of them then, as would happen in any society, they literally get recruited to other areas, maybe where there's a lower level of police being trained, because now you've got trained people, the good ones stand out, and they're literally recruited away. So the numbers then show, we have to be transparent and show, well, how many have we got in Kandahar that we say we're going to train? So there's a number of factors there. I can say that from when I was in Afghanistan this time, as opposed to the last time, we went out through the city. We visited police substations that had been built that weren't there before, officers that have been trained. One of the positive developments is they are reporting a much higher level of intelligence coming back from locals, who, when they see there's a police station built, they see there are uniformed officers, there's some degree of stability being offered by those officers. We're now seeing people come forward with intelligence, as you would expect with a mature police force, let's say in North America, where people would come forward with information. So progress is being made, but those are a couple of factors that the benchmarks have not been hit.
Thank you.
Sorry, that's the first 10 minutes. Time flies. Over to the block, Ms. Lalonde.
Oui, merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for being here, Mr. Day, and for these reports that you've provided us with. I heard what Dr. Sorai had to say, the Commissioner of Human Rights, and I'm going to use some excerpts from what was said to see how you think we can change things. She started to say, with respect to the Shia personal status laws, she said it was written by men only. The women in Parliament are under pressure, are fearful. Only one didn't vote for the law. Another, through the resolution, I think it was 1325, the government ensured equality, but today women are nowhere to be seen. Another, the enemies have burned the schools. Today, girls are afraid to go to school. We only have primary schools. That is not education. And another, in our justice system, there is discrimination. If a woman wants to divorce because her husband is beating her, divorce is refused. There are no women on the Supreme Court. And I would conclude by saying that the sentence that impressed me the most was when she said, there are many good things that have been done. And she doesn't want us to stop our efforts, but there are more and more people who are wondering whether they will make it till tomorrow morning. I share your concerns, Ms. Lalonde. I think it is important to focus on certain things. We all agree many things have already been done, many good things have already been done, but definitely much remains to be done. Because Afghan society is centuries old, and it has not given any rights to women, at least not according to our standards here in the West. And we've been in Afghanistan since 2001 or 2002, and we have seen some progress, but a great deal remains to be done. I agree. Women who are in Parliament, they have been subject to a great deal of pressure. It's tragic. It's very unfortunate. The hope is the fact that they are there as members of Parliament. But they need support. That is why it is important when we have situations such as the Shia personal status law that our voice be very strong. All I can say is that I agree with you, I share your concerns, and as far as I'm concerned, this underlines why we are there in Afghanistan to continue providing support. The situation with the schools is still tragic in some cases, because in Kandahar province, I believe, 331 schools, but sometimes there are almost half of the schools that are closed because of threats from the Taliban. It's tragic. If here in Canada a school is closed down, it's because of a snow day. But over there, it's because there are people threatening these young girls. We heard with great sadness the attacks using acid against the young girls. Taliban are trying to kill these young girls. It's unbelievable. So all I can say is that I share your concerns. And this simply emphasizes why we are there, to provide support. And much remains to be done. Welcome, Minister. I like your opening remarks when you are asking the people here at the table to provide you with some advice. Perhaps I would have two words to say, perhaps on priority 4 and 5. Priority 4, we talk about the border issue. It seems to me that in the immediate future, someone like the Americans, we cannot separate the Afghan question from the Pakistan question, because we know the Taliban troops often fall back into Pakistan. And in the report, you don't mention, because I understand it covers the January, February, March period, but it seems to me there was a change in political will that was very significant in Pakistan with respect to dealing with the Taliban issue. And in the material you presented, you barely touch on the offensive in the Swat Valley, which is ending as we speak, and we're opening up another front. The Pakistan Army is opening up another front in Bano, where the obvious will of the Pakistan government is there to deal with the Taliban. I think that's a very significant development. I think in the next report you should focus on priority number 4. So that is my piece of advice, and I would like to hear what you think about the future. Now, on priority 5, where we talk about governance, there is a problem, which is a major one, in the choice of oh my God, Steve, can we talk about Clovis? I don't know if you know, you're familiar with, but there is a killer who's going to be the deputy to Karzai. He's a Tajik warlord who hasn't dismantled his army after many requests from the government. And there are allegations of kidnapping of foreigners for ransom. I'm wondering whether the Canadian government is passing on advice to Karzai and to President Karzai, and whether this huge problem has been raised, because it seems to me that it puts Afghanistan back into a very somber period. So I would like to hear what you have to say about Fahim. Well, you're going to say, well, he's going to have to decide for themselves a little bit, but this choice has led to a great deal of debate and reaction, this appointment of this individual. So comments then on Pakistan and on Fahim, please. Those are some very good questions. First of all, with respect to the border, I was on the border in Spin Boldak about 2 years ago now. And at that time, there was no organization. There were huge crowds of people on both sides of the border. When I saw them, what I thought was this: well, it's impossible to decide to determine who is from Pakistan, who's from Afghanistan, who is a Taliban. The situation was quite astounding. Now, 2 years later, there's more organization there at the border, and Canada has started the Dubai process, under which we organize meetings in Dubai with the Pakistanis and with the Afghans to focus on the situation on the border, at the border. And they set up a task force which will be holding regular meetings to assess the effectiveness of their work, and to assess whether the work will produce any results, namely to have a safer border, particularly with the American soldiers who've now arrived. At the moment, we have more soldiers along the border, close to Spin Boldak. and in Baluchistan province. So things are safer, but as with the question raised by Ms. Lalonde, we must look at what the situation was back in 2001 and whether or not any progress has been made. Progress has been made, but is there still a lot to be done? Yes. It is still not very safe.
We're going to have to move on. You go ahead.
Oui, est-ce que c'est possible que le ministre nous envoie par écrit?
Could the minister send in writing an answer to my second question, which I think is very important as well? So if you could please send the committee clerk the answer and the clerk would distribute it to us, I would appreciate that.
Avec le prochain question.
Well, yes, I will do that as you suggested, or I will add those comments later in replying to other questions.
We'll be sharing my time with Mr. O'Brien. Thank you, Minister, for being here. And it's always interesting to look at our advancements in Afghanistan since our deployment there. And I think frequently as Canadians, we sometimes expect that almost miracles would happen when we look at where Afghanistan was and how long it took it to get to that stage. It is remarkable the progress we've made. And I'd just like if you could expand a little bit on our issues with the border, and not only the fact that our military are there, but the civil training from our police and our border people that is happening with the Afghanis, so that ultimately they'll be responsible for their border. And if you could expand that as to where we're going, and probably looking more to the future than in the past in that whole area.
It's been very encouraging for me when I've gone to Afghanistan or meeting people here in Canada to see the number of people within our own agencies, police officers that are involved in ANP, the Afghan National Police Training, from the RCMP, but also from municipal forces across the country, and corrections officers in the prisons, and now border officers. These are our border officers who've come from here, which Canada is a relatively safe place to work, put themselves in a very high-risk environment to train border officers. We're now seeing the development of technology, fingerprint technology at the borders, and proper training of border officers. So we are seeing growth. I simply say there is more to do. That's the importance of these quarterly reports. We want to measure. We don't want to just say, well, you know, it's changed a lot since 500 years ago. Well, yes, it has, but that's not good enough. We have to see if our input of resources and literally of lives is having a measurable effect. And we believe it is, not just at the borders, but in other areas too. Again, we are working with the government and the people of Afghanistan, and I know that governments will change there, but the overall view, even of candidates who are running in the elections, are to, with most of them that we hear from, are to see progress. And I know that from time to time there are concerns about who might be running in a particular election. And I don't want to mention any names. You're free to do that. But as Monsieur Bachand has mentioned, hey, there are times when we will look at certain candidates who are running and we will say, you know, if I was involved in that election, if I was running against that candidate, I'd be making his or her past history very clear. But we have made a commitment that we're not going to interject ourselves into the election process. We are committed to the infrastructure, to the borders, to helping them become a country that can provide for their own security and take care of their own needs. So that includes what's going on at the borders, and that's also why we have reluctance to share about anything about a particular candidate. But the positive thing about even development of freedom of media within Afghanistan is that, without mentioning the candidates' names, their histories do become known, and it is circulated. And then people will have to make their own judgments.
Okay, I think one of the other things, and although it's not in the report, but seems that when we've heard from other witnesses, one of the issues is, particularly with both the Afghan National Army and the Afghan National Police and other civil bodies there, is the literacy. a very difficult stage at this point, starting from zero and moving ahead because of the literacy. And I'm just wondering if in your visits to Afghanistan you've seen the improvement within those organizations because of the assistance Canada's providing in the literacy side of things.
Yeah, the increase of adults taking literacy courses has been very significant. These are 10-month courses, and 11,000 have just completed another session of these courses. That's reported in our quarterly reports. And where I see it clearly manifest, we've had some comments. Byron mentioned some situations related to the Afghan National Police. Just to give you a snapshot, 2 years ago when I was there, and we had RCMP doing some police training. They were literally training these officers how to stop a vehicle without blowing it apart, to be frank, how to get people to get out of a vehicle without blasting them out, with a bazooka. And so they were learning literally how to stop a car and how to get people to come out of the vehicle. Now, these are things which to our police forces are fairly basic. This time when I went, I was looking at some of those same police officers, and they get diplomas as they hit the different levels. They had reconstituted a crime scene where a vehicle had actually been attacked. And they had, much as you would see, if I can use a sort of a Hollywood reference, a CSI type of scene set up. They had the little markers all over on the ground around the vehicle where there were shell fragments. They had their tape measures out. They were walking around with their notebooks, taking note of what they had seen. So here you had previously, literally, almost illiterate officers who basically stopping a car in the correct way was a major accomplishment, now reproducing in fairly sophisticated fashion a crime scene, gathering evidence and taking notes. So the literacy is having its effect with the police officers, but also in the general population. The majority of the people in this last tranche of 11,000 who took the course were women. And that's manifesting itself. Then they are more capable when we provide the microfinancing for small business loans for them. It all kind of works together. So again, progress is seen. We want to see more, but it is measurable and it is taking place.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Minister, for coming. There are two questions I want to quickly dwell on. One of deals with our signature project, which you rightly told Madame Lalonde how much you are concerned about the educational aspect of it. The signature project we have here is for the education one, and I see from your report that we do co-chair the board for educational board, development board, which is co-chaired by Canada, to build up the educational system over there, which is the key element, I think, in the whole, I would say, winning the minds and the hearts of the people of Afghanistan, Kabul. So if you want to elaborate on that one. And the second question I have is our priority number 6, which is seeking political reconciliation. And you have also, of course, talked. Now, I do know our government's position. It's up to the Afghan people to carry on. But could you perhaps give us some indication on efforts made by the government of Afghanistan to reach out to moderate Taliban? We know there's hardcore Taliban whom we will never be able to talk to, but there are some elements in there that there is a reconciliation process going on. So if you want to quickly dwell on those two.
Well, education is key in any society. We know that, and we're very pleased to be co-chairing some of the oversight there. We're putting significant dollars into that, and as I was saying with, again, Madame Lalonde's remarks, we're seeing progress, but there is a long way to go, and that really comes down to not a lack of wanting education from the part of the people in Afghanistan, but the threat that they are exposed to for wanting to be educated. And this is where we have to work closely with the Afghan authorities, of course, respecting how they like to see things progress, but on the security side. It is discouraging to see the number of schools that have to close and then reopen, all based on threat. I'll tell you where we're going to see an increase in the number of people being educated and the levels rising with the influx now of American troops, some 17,000 more as of today, and that will increase, we're told. The ability to provide security has jumped up exponentially. And with that, you're going to see a corresponding, or our thought is, and we'll record it in the next quarterly report, our thought is you're going to see a significant bump forward in the number of people being educated. So we're, if anything has held us back in terms of numbers, it's largely on the security side. It's not the lack of will. On the Truth and Reconciliation process, again, we are doing what we can, respecting the people of Afghanistan and their governments, to assist them in this process. If they make a decision that they're going to have discussions with Taliban at certain level, and it really gets tricky. How do you define what's a moderate Taliban and what's an extreme Taliban? But we would hope that the people of Afghanistan are going to be engaging with those who are going to want to set aside violence as a means of advancing their political gains. That's the definition of terrorism. People who are going to respect the basic rights of human beings, men and women. People are going to see that attacking innocent civilians, killing children, killing the elderly are not part of a civilized society and should have no part in that. And in that process, where our CETA funding goes, a number of areas, in the areas of their Justice Department, both the administration and the understanding of justice, and then helping them to understand in different rural areas, especially in different villages, they basically have their own system of administration, their own system of governance, and how that can be tied into a broader consensus, a broader acceptance of certain basic values. So we want to respect these shuras, but we also are funding to help them, give the funding to help the people of Afghanistan raise these basic levels of appreciation of human rights.
Mr. Dewar, 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Minister for being here today. I just want to start off with a couple of concerns I have regarding reporting. You know that recently it was noted in the press that there was a human rights overview report done by DFATE. And included in that report were things that aren't in this report. And I think, this committee's looked at what could be shared with the committee. We had a whole committee meeting about, sharing of information, confidentiality, et cetera, and sensitive documents. But it seems to me that a DFATE human rights report would be something that should be reflected here, and it's important information. And I just want to cite a couple of things and just, first of all, get the fact that if you've read it, and why it perhaps isn't in here, because according to the report, there's a major problem in trafficking of children and citation of particularly boys for purposes of sexual exploitation, forced labor. 57% of Afghan marriages involve girls under the legal age of 16. That women are, this is my take on it, that in fact what you see here is that women are being used as a form of currency to pay off debts. Now I know this isn't new in terms of cultural facets here, but it is happening. And then finally, schools. Respectfully, Minister, we've heard the government say at different times that we're there and we're building schools and kids are going to school and girls are going to school who haven't before, and we all want that, certainly. But the reporting from DFATE is saying that half of school-age children don't attend. That we've had schools that were built, in fact, no one's in them. 538 schools are closed as of June 2008, and 58% of those schools that were closed, out of the number I just cited, were in Kandahar, where we are. So I'm just wondering, and then there's 147 students and children were killed. Just wondering, well, first of all, you've read the report that I'm referring to?
I'm aware of that report.
Okay, so I don't want to ask you questions about things you weren't aware of. And I'm just wondering why that isn't reflected in this report.
Well, we report progress along the lines of our 6 priority areas and the signature projects that we've identified. There are, I would say, there are at any given time dozens of reports out there in terms of progress or lack of progress. and we try and take those into account. I think the main concerns that you've talked about, we have reflected in our report. The number of schools, as I indicated to Madame Lalonde, at any one time that can be closed could be up to half the schools in Kandahar. I think it's a matter of, is the glass half full or is it half empty? So if you're talking about half the schools being closed, I share that concern. I'm also pleased to say half the schools are open. I'm pleased to say that there is progress in terms of the number of people going to school, especially girls. But is it anywhere near where we'd like it to be? No. Matter of fact, we've put in benchmarks that we'd like to see attendance rates. Some of those benchmarks are achieved and some aren't, and that's the reason for our transparent reporting process. So you've raised a number of important issues that show the challenges that remain in Afghanistan. And we also need to show that gains are being made. We can give, there are a lot of things happening in Afghanistan that aren't germane to the mandate we have in our report. Monsieur Bachan talked about what's going on in the Swat Valley, for instance, the increase of activity and the increase of determination level from Pakistan. A lot of that happened, first of all, after March 31, and has taken place March 31, so we wouldn't directly comment on it.
No,
So
no, fair enough.
what I'm doing, Paul,
I'm not referring to that, though.
Yeah,
and
what I'm hearing from you is more of a consideration of other reports that are out there, and we'll try and embrace that.
I want them. With respect, I want to see them in the reporting here, because you said half empty, half full. I would say that what I'm seeing from this and hearing from the government often is the glass is full, and I think the glass is leaking.
Well, Paul,
if
I can just interject this point.
But I can't, just let me, I want to ask you a question then to respond, is that there's another report, and that was by the Afghan Human Rights Commission, about how police and law enforcement officials are training and behaving. And we're training them, and the behavior, I think most people would find more than shocking, of the law enforcement officials on the ground. We find that in this Afghan Human Rights Commission report, and I'll ask you if you've read it, that we actually fund the Independent Human Rights Commission, that the use of torture is being used by law enforcement officials throughout Afghanistan. This is a report written by the Independent Human Rights Commission, that 20% of law enforcement officials aren't aware that it's against the law to use methods of torture when they have prisoners. And I was shocked that members of the task force hadn't read the report, because it seems to me if we're going to be training police, we should be training them so they're actually going to be using methods that are going to be ones that we support, but secondly, are ones that are not going to cause any further chasm between the people and the law enforcement officials. So I'd just like to know if you've been briefed on that report. It was a report that was available on the website of and it's not just another report with respect, it's a very important one. It's about how we train police and what they're doing. And secondly, if you believe it's important for our task force membership to have read reports like that and to actually embed them in the training that we're providing for law enforcement officials.
Well, let me say a couple of things, and I'll challenge you with respect on something you said. You said we're reporting on these things that the glass is full. We're not reporting that anywhere, Paul. As a matter of fact, the transparency of these reports has been remarked on in a positive way at NATO and at the United Nations. They say, boy, this is a very transparent report. There's not one of those categories that we have fulfilled yet. So please don't say that we are giving anything but we're using all the data that we have, and in the most accurate and transparent way possible, we are showing that where we are relative to hitting those benchmarks. And in many of those, as I said to Madame Lalonde, as I said to Mr. McKenzie, we are very concerned about the distance that the people of Afghanistan still have to go with the threats that they're under. So I just wanted to clarify that. Nowhere do we say we've achieved 100%. We're simply reporting what we have achieved.
But nowhere are the numbers I've mentioned in the report. And that's
well, Paul, there are, and you've got one report there, and I think
it's your report, not mine. It's the DFATE, and the other one is the Human Rights Tribunal.
Yeah, Paul, I was very considerate when you were talking, and so I'd like to make these comments here. There are large numbers of reports that are out there. We're trying to reflect within the confines of our own reporting as accurately as possible what we've achieved. And I can tell you that the officers that we have trained, are they all 100% perfectly acting within what we would expect from police officers? I would say no. I don't know of a jurisdiction in the world where that would be the case. Is there a distance to go? Yes, there is. Do we condone, support, or sweep under the carpet any possible instances of torture? Absolutely not.
What I'm saying is that
but just let me finish, Paul.
I visited the reports, Minister, and how would you know if you haven't read the
Mr. Dewar,
I visited the prison itself in Kandahar. I visited Sarposa prison, talked with prisoners, saw what was set up there, listened to police officers. We talk with our own training officers who get to work with these people every day, with our military who get to see what is going on. You'll remember about 2 years ago, a number of reports were issued which suggested that Canadian military might be, if not involved, at least implicated in areas of possible torture or turning an eye to that. And I know you didn't endorse that, but reports came out to that effect, and the Minister of Defense just 2 days ago showed the extensiveness of the investigations that we do when we hear these allegations,
but I'm talking about
and completely exonerating Canadian military. Well, I'm just letting you know, Paul, we use that same investigative process. If we even hear of an instance of possible torture, we want to know if it's happening, we want to investigate, and we're very strong on this. Could some ANP still be involved in torture? It's possible, and I'll tell you what, if we hear about it, we go after it very aggressively.
But I'm talking about how they're trained, Minister, and I'm asking, I mean, two questions I had was, if you'd read the report on the Independent Human Rights Commission on what is happening on the ground by law enforcement officials and the use of torture, that was my first question, if you've read that. And the second one, what are we doing about that in training officials? And that's really important. If 20%, less than 20% know that it's against the law to use torture, I think that's an issue in their training, and we need to make sure they're being trained. So have you read the report, and are we changing the way we're training, reflecting that?
We're right smack on time, and I understand that you have to leave immediately. If you want a few minutes to wrap up.
Point of order, Chair.
Well, let me just say there's a number of questions, including what Paul has raised, that I'm more than happy to get back in writing.
Good.
And I can tell you this, that any police officers that we have trained fully understand that torture is absolutely unacceptable. I can say that, and the rest of the questions I'll be happy to reply in writing, and hopefully maybe report again to this committee. Thank you for your good work.
Thank you very much, Minister. Point of order?
Yes, Chair. Considering the importance of the Afghanistan mission and of this particular report and the fact that because of circumstances beyond your control, we started this session 10 minutes late, would it be possible to submit questions that would be responded to in writing by the Minister? The Minister had to leave right on time, and some questions that would have been helpful with this report.
Well, he seemed willing to submit in writing answers to questions he wasn't able to get to. I would suggest that you have such questions, you get them into the clerk, and we'll proceed. We weren't able to ask him that before he left, so I would accept questions and we'll move them forward.
Should I provide those questions verbally at this time?
No, if you could do them in writing, I think that'd be fine. We have to
Thank you,
move on.
Chair.
You bet. Thank you. We'll suspend for a few minutes while we move into in camera.